what it takes to lead an employee resource group, otherwise known as an employee network. That is what I'm getting into in this video. Also, this may help identifying your next possible successor. You know, I talked a few videos ago about whether this was the year that you needed to step down. So if it is that year, how do you identify that really good person that's going to take over from you? That's what this video is about. I got asked recently, I'm actually delivering some training for a client at the moment, and the group of network leads there have asked me about this. You know, what is it that takes, what are the skills, what are the behaviours that it takes to be a good network leader? And I know that succession is something that a lot of leaders are thinking about, because maybe they are coming into like their final year, they're going to be stepping down, and there's now going to be some sort of selection process. You know, it's either an application, or I know some networks do voting, so that's all going to be happening. So what do you want to look for in a successor? What are those traits that you want to look for? So I've got 10 traits today that I've borrowed from, first of all, just what good leadership skills look like, but also I've borrowed it from the world of change management, specifically running projects and programs and transformation, which you'll know is my background. There are lots of similarities between that and running networks, because typically you don't have positional authority, right? So often you're trying to corral people and resources that don't technically work for you. So in theory, they don't really have to say they don't really have to do what you tell them to do, or do what you ask them to do. So that is quite a unique challenge. So some of the skills that good program managers need also are similar to skills that good network leaders need as well. So let's get into this. This is ERG Strategy, the channel that brings you tips, strategies, practical tools and advice to help you build thriving employee networks that are engaged, that make a difference in the organisation. New videos every Tuesday, and I also go live every week on LinkedIn on Friday morning at 8:30 a.m. UK time. So let's get into this. The 10 traits that it takes to be a good network leader. First of all, I'm going to talk about skills, and then I'm going to get into the behaviours, right? So first of all, the skills that you need. The first one, absolutely, the first among equals, I'm going to say relationship building, knowing how to build relationships, otherwise maybe known as stakeholder engagement, but let's just keep it real. You know, can you get along with people? Are you able to kind of meet new people, build rapport, get to know them, build some sort of trust so that you can work with them? And some of the key people are your HR team, so people, the people team, people and culture, the DEI or inclusion team, absolutely critical. I know way too many networks and or network leaders that do not have good relationships with their DI teams for one reason or another, and maybe I'll do another video about that one day, about all of the reasons that that these roles sometimes fall out. Being able to build a good relationship with your sponsor. We know that sponsors can be a little bit hit and miss, let me just put it like that, and so sometimes it needs the right person that can kind of like reach out and nurture that relationship so that the sponsor works effectively for you as a network. Comms, really critical actually. If you don't want to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting and all of the legwork yourself, then having a good a relationship with your comms team is key. And then we've got, you know, other areas of the business, other networks, etc. You know, is key to just making your life easier, I would say, as a network. The second trait I want to talk about is storytelling. Now, you know, some people might just sort of say, oh, the second, you know, trait that you need is comms, you know, being able to communicate. There's something about that, right? But I think in an age where, you know, AI can write a lot of what you want to write when it comes to either an email or a newsletter, right? Can probably write it better than you can speak. But being able to tell stories is a real key skill. And if you can master that, I would say actually, and a lot of these skills, obviously these are things that you don't have to be born with them. You can learn them. And the one skill that I would say is definitely worth learning, not just for your time as a network leader, but just in life generally, but particularly if you're looking to progress through the organization, being able to tell stories is absolutely critical. So that's one thing that I would really think about mastering, in terms of being able to share things like member experiences, why you got involved with the network, right? What's your story? Why are you even doing this leadership role? So being able to tell those stories is really critical. The third one, I've got here picking your battles. But as somebody called it last week, who I was speaking to, they said being able to read the room. I mean, that covers a lot of what we're talking about anyway, but picking your battles. And I know there's one particular network leader who I know, and he always sort of says some people are too emotional to be network leads, and that, I think, that kind of like links to what I'm saying here. Even sometimes when there is a lot of emotion and there is a lot of passion around a particular topic, you've got to know how to pick your battles. You can't be you can't literally fight about everything. You just can't. You are literally going to burn out, and you're actually going to annoy a lot of people around you as well, and you're actually going to become quite ineffective. So you do have to learn to pick your battles. You have to learn how to sort of like use diplomacy. You almost have to learn to be a little bit political, and I don't mean that in the negative sense of the word, but you do need to understand how to operate, particularly with senior levels as well. Knowing when to push an episode, knowing when to push an issue, knowing when to park it, and knowing when to escalate it to your exec sponsor, for example, or to your line manager or to HR, which again is why it's so important to build those relationships, is really key. Being able to structure the committee to play to the strengths of the individuals, and also based on the priorities that you want to deliver as a network, is really important. So not just putting people in the roles just because like maybe they're the only people that volunteered, or just because somebody has said that they fancy having a go at something, but you can see maybe that they're not a really good fit. So, you know, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations with individuals about the roles and structures and things like that. So it's really important that you are able to develop the skills to be able to do that in a way that doesn't switch people off, right? It still kind of keeps people engaged and maintains goodwill. The other thing is vision. So having some level of vision and a clear sense of where the network is going and the why of the network. Now, the one thing I would say is, particularly if you don't necessarily have this at the start and you've just kind of come in because you're passionate about change, but you can't exactly see necessarily what the future looks like, this is where you can use your exec sponsor to help you. You know, your exec sponsor should be of a sort of level where they think strategically about the business, so they should be able to help you actually with that longer term vision. If you sort of say to them, you know, this is maybe a slightly weaker area for me, can you help me figure out what success looks like for this network in the future? And then let's go on to some of the behaviours. So those are skills, like the top 5 skills that I've called out. Let's get into behaviour. So this is kind of the how you show up on a day-to-day basis, how you run the network. Collaboration, so being able to work with people, especially across functions, teams, departments. Nobody wants silos, and nobody wants people that kind of just like run off and do things on their own, like mavericks, right? Sometimes you have to bring a little bit of that energy to get things done, but you don't want to be doing that all the time. You don't want to get a reputation for that either. So being able to collaborate with other networks in particular, right? Collaboration, not competition, I say always, with other networks and other areas of the business is really key. And it helps actually to balance out your workload. Otherwise, you will get burned out. And I have seen this in those types of leaders who lead in a way which is, you know, it's kind of the motivation isn't wrong, but they lead in a way that's like, I'm going to do it all myself. I mean, do you know what? I am the sort of person, I'm terrible with delegating, right? My VA will tell you that if you know her. I'm actually terrible with delegating, but when it comes to the sort of change that you're wanting to make in the network, you can't do it alone. You absolutely can't do it alone. So collaboration is really important. The other thing that I've got here is listening. Really important to listen. Really listen openly to feedback from members, especially the quiet ones actually, or even I want to say the ones that don't necessarily come to things, or they seem not as engaged. Find out why they're not engaged, right? Go and have like conversations with them. Don't just surround yourself with the sycophants who are like, the event was amazing and, you know, we need to do more of that and this, that and the other. You know, go and speak to the quiet ones that maybe aren't saying anything, or the ones that will tell you how it is, right? Rather than kind of like just blowing smoke, right? So listening is really important, and it can help to really shape priorities that lead to growth. Because if you only listen to the people who are agreeing that everything sounds great, and you can see that your engagement is dropping, then actually that feedback really is of limited use. You need to go and ask the people that are not engaged, right? And we know that engagement, very common challenge for networks. Lifting up others, right? This kind of like links a little bit to the collaboration, but lifting up others, giving other people airtime, giving them opportunities. I was talking to a network recently about involvement in policy change, and they said that each time there is, for example, a committee looking at a policy, they invite the network to be represented, and the co-chair usually goes. And I said to him, do you ever not sort of invite, offer that seat out occasionally to somebody else in the network? Or if you don't want to do that, do you potentially call almost like a sub focus group within the network and say, look, I've been asked to give views on XYZ policy change. What are your opinions? So this for me links to don't gatekeep, right? So lifting up others, giving other people an opportunity to shine, to build new skills. I'm going to give you another example, right? I have to really sort of sanitize it in case the person figures it out. But I once invited somebody to an event, and I can't give too many details because it will be obvious what it was. So I invited somebody to an event, and I said, I really want to get you involved in this event, you and your organization involved in this event. And there might be further opportunities afterwards to potentially get involved with the board, etc. Right? So that's how it was positioned. The person who looks after that organization, and I am being deliberately vague, came back to me and said, I can't make the event, but I don't want to pass the invite on because I kind of want to keep this one for myself. Like, I kid you not, the person literally said that to me, and I thought, wow, like this is what gatekeeping looks like. And the reality is, a lot of the time, people probably just aren't as vocal or transparent about the gatekeeping that they're actually doing. So, I've put here lifting up others, but I guess what I mean by don't gatekeep, right? Do not gatekeep. And I think this happens more than I probably even realize, right? But I hear people talking about it. So that's my 8th one, right? Number 9 is focus. Being able to focus and prioritize is key. Again, if you don't do this, you will be burning out, you and your whole committee, because you're going to be overcommitting the network to too many things, and often it's then lots of things that don't have impact. Less is more. When it comes to networks, absolutely, less is more. Choose a few priorities and do them really well rather than trying to do lots of things. Just don't. You've heard me say this before, right? Stop over-investing in events and awareness days, right? And focus on some of the more impactful, but maybe slightly trickier things to do that will have a bigger difference for the organisation. And then the 10th trait, we're nearly at the end, number 10, be helpful. That's it. Be helpful. Just have like a service mindset. Help people in the business. I think you'd be amazed, that by helping people, it will come back to, I kind of believe in karma. So if you put it out there and like are helpful to other people, you will find it comes back to you. What I don't mean by that, so just to be clear, I don't mean that you need to become everybody's therapist or like the union rep or like a sort of pseudo line manager. I'm not talking about that. I mean, just be like a useful, kind human being, basically. And that's it. That's my 10 traits. Now, what do you look for in a successor? I think if it was me, what you can think about the committee structure that you've got in your organisation and the organisational culture to think about the skills and behaviours that are most important for you. But if I had to sort of pick one or two, I absolutely would pick out the relationship building one. Absolutely critical. And within that, I would also be looking for the potential for that individual to build relationships, especially upwards, right? I would be reluctant to look for a leader that hasn't demonstrated that they have the level of confidence or initiative that's needed to build relationships with senior leaders, because that is critical. So if you don't see any evidence of that at all, I maybe would be a pass on that particular person, because I think it maybe gives an indicator that there is a bigger sort of like confidence or kind of get up and go issue, that it's going to be difficult to kind of develop that as a skill, right, in the time frame that you've got, especially if your tenure is only like 2 to 3 years. So that's the one thing I would say. The lifting up others, I think, is really important. So go for somebody who, you know, you often hear them talking about other people positively. I think that's a good sign. You know, that they're recommending you to other people, or they connect you to other people. That's a really good sign, because they're well connected in the organisation. And I think the final one that I want to mention is you want somebody that is optimistic. And I don't want to, I've deliberately not used the word positive, because I'm not talking about toxic positivity, but there must still be optimism, even if things are bad, even if things are not going well, either for the network or within the organisation in terms of morale and all those sorts of things. You need somebody that has a level of optimism, because this is not easy work, right? So if, you know, do not take somebody that is constantly moaning about what's going on. You might think that that's a good fit. It's not. So you need to look for somebody who is optimistic, because they are going to need optimism. And that's it. You know, those are, if I had to prioritize 3 of the traits that you want to look for in a successor, that is what I would say to look for. I hope that was useful. If you've got any questions, or maybe some thoughts, or other traits or skills that you've seen that you think are more important, please drop them below in the comments. If you like the video, well, please like it, right? Give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and share it with somebody that maybe needs to hear this. Okay, that's it. I will see you next week, or I will see you live on Friday, 8:30. LinkedIn's the best place if you want to get in the comments. Take care. Bye, guys.